So I now want to come to the question of how should India respond. Remember, after the Uri terror attack, there was a surgical strike that was carried out. Then we had the Balakot airstrikes that happened as well. But this is at a level where does it invite that kind of a counter cross-border operation, whether it is through the army, the air force, or maybe this time even the navy or the missile forces or whatever it is that we decide to use? Or are the Pakistanis deliberately keeping the threshold just below boiling point where India feels bad but doesn't have enough reason to launch a counter-terror publicized attack? There will be some action on the ground at a tactical level, but do we raise the threshold? So Gaurav, A, there's an election that's coming in the next 5 months. B, this doesn't reflect well on the Modi Sarkar because they were in parliament recently making all these claims, and soon after that there is this terror attack. So there will be, we already saw what Uddhav Thackeray's Sena said about all your claims on terrorism not amounting to very much. Does this then put pressure on the security establishment to respond in a way that the enemy start a third lesson after Uri, after Balakot?
So, Rahul, the real pressure is yet to come. The coming spring of 2024, before elections in Kashmir, is likely to be very hot. When Yashwardhan Azad is here, intelligence community is talking about it. Right now, there are between 250 to 300 terrorists waiting at launch pads. The BSF has said that on camera, on record. And these are launch pads south of Pir Panjal, north of Pir Panjal, because it's all snowed in. All of that will escalate. The real escalation will come just in the run-up to elections in a way to show the Modi government in poor light, is what intelligence agencies believe. All these toll claims of Article 370, a muscular government, all of that will be challenged in this multi-pronged. There could also be something all along the India-China line of actual control. Less likely there, more likely at the LC. You're absolutely right, Rahul. 40 soldiers were killed, 40 CRPF personnel were killed in Pulwama, and India was forced to respond, or India responded with the Balakot. Just now, 35 soldiers have been killed, but Pakistan very cleverly is keeping the threshold level low. It's like boiling that frog in water. That frog doesn't realize he's being boiled because the temperature has been increased very gradually. 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. It's added up to 35, not yet 40, but then there is no talk of surgical strike this time.
We don't know. We don't know because this government has taken a very clear position that there will be retaliation. The question is, General Kulkarni, retaliation to what?
Can I just respond to this?
Just 1 second. Is this just a regular terror attack, and therefore, while there can be a tactical response on the ground, as there often is after this kind of a terror attack against your local adversary, or does this require a higher order retaliation of the kind that we saw in Uri, of the kind that we saw in Balakot? Because what Pakistan is clearly doing is completely unacceptable. How would you look at this very important question?
Rahul, what happens is just below the threshold point Pakistan is operating. There is no denying the fact, because we have to treat this entire area as hotbed for terrorists and have to handle it well. And if we know that 250, 300 terrorists are operating from the launch pads and they're visible, I think there should be no reason why we should not knock them off. It is important. Now, we may have to use for knocking off these terrorists across, but within a certain area and limit, because until and unless we do that, the root cause has to be eliminated. Pakistan will continue to use terror. It will use proxy war. It will use all kinds of tactics for the hybrid warfare that is over there. We have to ensure that at no point of it, forget about the politics, forget about the parties which are in power. It is our responsibility to ensure that all these hotbed terrorists launch pads have to be knocked off.
Syed Zafar Islam, respond to what General Kulkarni is saying, and many like him. After Uri, after Balakot, there is now amongst the forces, and even amongst those who are watching at this time, an expectation that there will be a response. It cannot be that our forces get attacked repeatedly. Last time the special forces were killed as well. Now you've got the armored corps being targeted. It cannot be that we keep getting attacked and that we can't just neutralize just those terrorists who are involved in this encounter. There has to be a bigger message that's sent to the adversary.
Well, Rahul, I'm sure everyone knows how our government reacts. And we always known to be giving befitting response to the Pakistan. Having said that, the situation and the exact situation is being assessed by the government, and appropriate action will be taken which includes surgical strike, which includes many other action which may be required to neutralize not only the terrorist here, but also giving a very firm message
No, are you just saying that because that's the right thing to say? Are you saying it because you got some information and reason to believe that that's how we intend to react?
No, if you just have to do a back testing of our government policy. We have always given free hand to our soldiers to take appropriate action, whatever they feel appropriate at that point in time. There is absolutely no message except that they are authorized and empowered to take appropriate action at that point in time, and no message will be given from Delhi or elsewhere. That is the message, and same thing goes even when the situation warrants. Surgical strike, air strike have been conducted, and this is something which we have demonstrated. We may demonstrate again if the government feels that
Yashovardhan
it is the
Azad,
right time.
electorally, you know, what General Kulkarni is saying, smoke out the terrorists who had these pads. If you can find the pad, and whether you use rockets, you use mortars, you use, I mean, depending on what force you want to use, you can find a way of attacking those terror launch pads. If that were to happen, there'd be political consequences. Last time, what happened after Pulwama turned out to be a game changer. We're in that period where you're building up to the elections, nationalism, everybody uniting behind the flag is something that potentially could help the Bharatiya Janata Party. But this is also a military problem. So how would you look at the issue of people, especially what Zafar Islam is saying, backtest us, see what we did something last time, we'll do something this time?
I think we should refrain from any kind of chest thumping and advertising and sloganeering that we are the kings. What we should do, number one, is that the army knows how to react and how to give the reply at the local level. We should allow them to do it and tell them to do it. You know, because it's a matter of concern. 59 people have died this year, including terrorists and our security forces, and it's very, very critical now to keep it on a low key and improve our security at the LOC. That's number one. Number two, what Gaurav said is an extremely important point, that the elections are coming, and mind you, Rahul, I'm telling you, there'll be a kind of an intensification, whether in the form of these attacks or whether in the form of creating more and more dissatisfaction or radicalization in the valley. For that, we need the intelligence machinery to be really geared up, to be empowered, and that's extremely important. So in that respect, again, I will focus on redrawing of our strategy. Smoking out is not easy. You know, we can say all this, but it's not easy at all. So it has to be a very sustained kind of an operation, redrawing of strategy and gearing up the intelligence machinery. More important that at the LOC, the security management has to be much, much better.
Mohan Kumar Mangalam, are you concerned that in a very roundabout kind of fashion, especially because of what happened post-Pulwama, this actually helps the BJP? It helps the BJP because if there is a counter reaction, like you're already hearing Zafar Islam say, we will do a surgical strike, we will attack the enemy where it hurts, and then again nationalism, patriotism, anti-Pakistan, all that sentiment comes to the fore, and it helped the BJP in 2019. We're in that same stretch again where it's advantage BJP, disadvantage opposition.
Rahul, if that happens, it so happens. I don't think, I'm not a warmonger, and I'm in complete agreement with Yashovardhan Azadji when he says that these things should be dealt by the army at the local level. I will take one point from his, when he was talking, he said that the locals convey messages, their messages. And I think maybe one thing we can do as a responsible government is restore statehood to Jammu and Kashmir as soon as possible, so that those who feel disenfranchised enough to convey messages for terrorists start feeling like they're part of our country completely again. I think that's very important.
Okay,
so apart from any military
what
action,
could we have done differently? Remember, this is an army convoy. These are terrorists, and these are very vast mountains, right? It's not a small stretch, vast mountain. They were attacked from a hilltop. Where do you think this process went wrong, and what should be done to prevent it?
Rahul, there are two things. If you notice that gypsy and if you notice this truck, We need more armored personal carriers. We need more armored fighting vehicles where the opposition can play a very critical role. More important than restoring statehood right now is giving the army armored fighting vehicles, giving the army more bulletproof jackets and helmets. While they're coming in numbers, more are required, more night vision devices.
Are you saying that everybody moves around instead of moving around in a jeep or a jonga, they're moving around in APCs?
The moment you're going in for a look, the terrorists know your standard operating procedures now. The terrorists know they'll switch on their Thuraya or your signal intelligence will catch it. You will mount a team. There will be a contact. You will send in additional forces, and that's where they're lying in wait. They're lying in ambush. So they know your standard operating procedures. You need to change your standard operating procedures. I'm a civilian. I know their standard operating procedures. Point one. Point two, we need more armored fighting vehicles for our soldiers. They cannot be going on soft-top gypsies
but that can't be changed overnight either.
Which is where, so now Indian companies are manufacturing these trucks. More of these trucks need to be brought in, and that is where the opposition needs to put the government, in their crosshairs or on the mat. Give our army more resources that are required as of now, and that is where senior officers need to. Also, some of the senior officers, if you've had 5 such instances, there is something that needs to be done by the leadership in that area. That leadership is not able to produce solutions.
No, this is absolutely true. One attack can be a one-off. If it's happening again and again in the same region, there are very serious issues of how the forces are operating, which need to be looked at. There is no going away from that. And the fact also is we are heading towards elections in Jammu and Kashmir, elections nationally, and this is where the enemy also gets active. And especially given the fact that some forces were removed, a full division was removed from this region, taken to the line of actual control, suggests that Pakistan knows there's a vulnerability and an opening here, and very naturally its best friend China is also prodding them to go and poke and provoke, potentially wanting us to bring some forces back from the LAC, or at least create that pressure, that that tension in decision making. So our enemies are vigilant. Our nation and our army too needs to remain vigilant. My heart goes out to all those who were killed in this attack and their families, their loved ones. And I just hope that, we're hearing from Zafar Islam that there will be consequences. And I think there need to be consequences, because we saw that in Uri, we saw that after Pulwama. The terrorists and their handlers get a very stern message that you cannot mess with the Indian state. You cannot mess with the Indian army. That message, that fear needs to be created. It worked for a while, but then it's like the kutte ki pooch, it bounces back just as you leave it. So therefore, maybe it's time for another very stern message to be delivered. And I'm quite certain, from what I know of the Indian army, that a message will be delivered sooner than later. Whether it will be spectacular, announced, that we don't know. Uri was announced. Balakot was announced. Whether it will be tactical and on the ground, or whether it will be announced in public, we don't know. But there will be, mind you and make no mistake, consequences for what just went down in this area. Thank you to our guests for joining us. Sunil G. Bhatt and Gaurav will keep reporting on the story.